beer, what kind of beer do you think you'd be?
I would say I would be a low alcohol crushable beer, so that you could enjoy many of me.
The more Paul, the better.
Yeah, well, not for some people, but yeah.
Someone, actually a coworker, asked me this the other week, and it's not even a question I had ever thought of before. But right away I said pale ale, just because I'm Irish and I'm super pale.
Yeah, there you go. Nice.
I don't even tan. I just burn. It's like pale or red. There's really not much of an in-between for me.
That would have been a good answer for me because I'm the same way.
So with that, welcome to episode 34 of Stories from a Bar. I, of course, am your host, Chris Osborne, and I'm really excited about this episode. I am chatting with Paul Leone, Executive Director at the New York State Brewers Association. Welcome to the show, sir.
Thanks, Chris. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, absolutely. I was excited that you said you could take the time to do this. I know the Brewers Association has a lot of big virtual festival coming up, and we'll of course get to that. And in doing my research on you, it just, one of the first thoughts I had was like, holy shit, this just seems like a busy guy.
No, I mean, isn't everybody busy? Hopefully, and not suffering too much during this.
No, yeah, absolutely. Yeah, it's staying busy. It helps, actually. Mm-hmm. Fortunately, I'm back in my office full time. So I still do this as a hobby, and I love video games. So plenty of ways to stay busy.
Sure, that's good.
Something to keep your mind off of the nonsense when you can. But let's get on with the show. We're doing a virtual edition of this. I said in my last episode with Eric Budraki of True Brew Magazine, which was super fun because that was my first episode out at a bar again since March. So,
good. You met him out.
Yeah, 3 or 4 months. We recorded that at Unified Beer Works. It was a great time. Not everything is back to normal, of course, even though some places are open for some in and outdoor dining. So it's probably just going forward a mix of on location and virtual episodes, which again, I don't mind doing them at home every once in a while. Like I was just telling you, and I've said it before, my couch is 6 feet from where I'm recording and the fridge is only like 10.
Right. Nice.
And plus we're doing this mainly virtually because you live in Rochester. Am I right?
That's correct.
Awesome.
Yes.
That's about a 3-hour drive from Schenectady, I think.
Yeah. Yeah. That's where you were in Schenectady?
Yes.
Yeah, I like Schenectady.
No, I'm from Schenectady, and I moved away for a while, lived in South Carolina, and came back. Maybe it's been like 15 years ago now, I think. It's definitely changed so much just from when I was a kid growing up. Pumping in a lot of money, of course, downtown, doing a lot of great things. Everything looks really good. And like I said, Rochester, it seems like a bit of a long drive to, kind of meet in person, although hopefully one day we can and have a beer. I do have some family in Rochester, though, so I've been out there a handful of times, and the drive, even though it's like 3 hours, it just feels so much longer. It just seems like one of those super boring drives to me.
Because it's the throughway.
Yeah.
It's the throughway. Yeah.
And it's just a whole lot of nothing.
Yep.
I will say I miss Wegmans.
Oh, yeah.
You hear a lot of Wegmans stories in places where there is no Wegmans.
Yeah, though you're probably saving a lot of money by not having one, because you tend to go there and it's like, $100 later and you're like, I just got a few items. So it's expensive.
It's not
they have everything. It's an amazing store.
It really is. I was super impressed. And so speaking of Rochester, actually we should probably talk about what we're drinking first. I'm jumping ahead of myself. I myself have lined up a couple cans here of all the same thing. I picked up a case this past weekend. I went over to Frog Alley in Schenectady, picked up a case of their fantastic Kicker Pilsner. They're having a sweet sale where it was 24 cans for $25. I'm like, wow, how can you say no to that? Correct. Nice flash sale. So I had to stop in and pick up a case of that. So a shout out to Frog Alley. Plus, what's great about these is they're 12-ounce cans instead of the 16 that I've gotten so used to handling things to craft beer. So whenever I pick up a 12-ounce can now, it feels so small in my hand, like I could just crush this with ease.
Right.
What are you sipping on over there?
I am sipping on a Lunkenheimer elderberry Kolsch.
Ooh, that sounds interesting.
Yeah, it's very good.
I haven't heard of them.
Lunkenheimer is in Weedsport, so just off the Thruway exit between Syracuse and Rochester.
Oh, all right.
And they've won an awful lot of awards from our beer competition.
Oh, have they really?
Yeah. They
Nice.
win every year. And they're one of those quiet breweries that makes really great beer.
Awesome. I'll definitely have to keep an eye out for some of their stuff.
Mm-hmm.
We've got a lot of great stuff to talk about. We just talked about what we're drinking. It was hard to, as I'm trying to put some notes together, trying to even figure out where to start. But why don't we start with how you actually ended up in Rochester? Because in doing some research, and believe it or not, I actually do some research for these podcasts. It's, just a matter of kind of some simple Google searches and some social
Sure.
media searches and things like that. And I realized while I'm doing it, there's like a real thin line between doing research for something productive and crazy ex stalker type. It seems like.
Digging in deep. Yeah.
Yeah. You've gotten around. I came across just your professional website, the Paul Leone TV, where you had an old resume posted, and it seems like you've
Oh.
been all over. How did you end up in Rochester?
Well, I started in Rochester, so this is my home to begin with.
Okay.
And so then I left in the early '90s. Worked at the Baseball Hall of Fame for a number of years, and then left there to do some work at Home and Garden Television. Moved to Washington, and then just one TV job after another. That's what you do. It's sort of nomadic in a lot of ways. And so whenever you get onto a show, you end up living in the city where the show is being produced. And then so we bounced around, and we were finally in Texas, Fort Worth, Texas. And just, not loving Texas, although Texas is a great state. So don't get me wrong. Like Fort Worth was nice, but we were far away from home. And that's where in Rochester is home. So we literally left everything. We packed up, no jobs, came home and started over.
Wow.
And so, yeah, it was one of those, I wouldn't call it a midlife crisis, but I would call it a situation where I knew I wanted to work in beer just because I had been shooting beer pilots for a while. I was trying to land a beer TV show. And none got picked up, but I love the people so much. And it's like, how do I turn this into a job? So I just started, kicking around. There's Rohrbach Brewing in Rochester, gave me some work. And John Erlob, who owns that, who is just a great guy, said, I don't have any jobs. I don't have a job that you're looking for, but the New York State Brewers Association is looking for an executive director. I'll put in a good word. And then off to the races. That was the job I wanted. And fortunately enough, I got. So it was the first one, in 2013. Had 9 interviews for this job. It was.
Did you really?
Yeah.
What was the interview process like?
So David Katleski, who was one of the founders of the association and owned Empire Brewing, he was the president at the time, and he just felt like, I'm going to ship you around to the board members. I've got to get everybody on board with you if you're the guy. And so I just drove around and had interviews with board members at the time, and they came back and said, yeah, you're the guy. So executive directors are funny because it's, they either come from one or two backgrounds. You either you hire a marketing type person, which was me, or you hire a lawyer, somebody who's really good at lobbying or good at political, depending on where you are, what your needs are. And in Rochester, in New York, the board had done so much work politically and legislatively, they really had it in hand. So they needed somebody more like me to say, how are we going to start market New York State beer? And my TV background helped, and the contacts that I had helped, and it all, I don't know, it was lucky. I said I was the luckiest person in the world to have gotten here in time for this job.
Wow, interesting.
Yeah.
I'll jump more into the Brewers Association in a minute because I actually meant to ask you a Rochester question. Like I said, I have some family out there. I've been out there. Haven't really gone out there, to really explore, check out any breweries or bars. And I definitely would like to because there's some great stuff out that way. But for anyone who may not know, who finds themselves in Rochester, what's worth checking out there?
Well, I tell you what, Rochester has become a real hotbed for breweries. It depends on what you define Rochester as well. The Finger Lakes is sometimes considered, the region is considered the Finger Lakes. And sometimes Rochester gets lumped into the Finger Lakes. And so it's a really growing beer scene. I think so much so that even Other Half opened a brewery just south of Rochester.
Did they really? I didn't know that.
Yeah, their second brewery was is in Bloomfield, which is just south of Rochester. And they just wanted to be up here, and they kill it up here. And now they just opened a third brewery in Washington, D.C.
Oh, wow.
A big, giant production brewery. So, there's a lot of other New York City breweries that have do really well up here. So I wouldn't be shocked if more come up. But even the Rochester-based breweries and the Finger Lakes breweries, it's a quality area for beer. It's the second largest area for beer in the state behind Long Island. And so in terms of number of breweries.
I didn't even think of Long Island. I knew I was going, when I go down to the New York City sometimes, which I used to like to do before the whole COVID thing, every once in a while, just because, it's a train ride. It's a nice day trip. It's usually about almost just under 3 hours to get there. So it's always a fun day trip. But if you go down there drinking, there's not really breweries in the city, right in Manhattan, because I assume it's just too expensive. They're all off to Brooklyn on the side.
Brooklyn is where it's at. Yeah, there's actually now, I think, 2 breweries in Manhattan. So Torch and Crown, which just opened, and then Alphabet City or Death Ave is another one that's there. It's very small.
Yeah, I haven't heard of those. And I didn't even think about even going farther out into Long Island.
A ton of breweries out on Long Island. Yeah, it's got quite a few. I think they have, close to 45 or more just on Long Island.
Wow.
Yeah.
That is, That's, well, now I know where to go if I want to take a drinking trip.
Yeah. Well, you got to use our New York State craft beer app. I hope you have that. Do you have that?
I do. I downloaded it. Actually, I downloaded it recently.
Yeah. I mean, that has every, shameless plug, but for anybody listening, you want to know where every single brewery is in the state of New York and how to get there. That's where that all lives on that app, the New York State craft beer app. Yeah.
And it's awesome to have that just in my pocket.
Right. Yeah, me too. Because I don't know where everything is. And sometimes when we're out driving around, there's a nearby breweries button. And so we could be in the middle of nowhere and you hit it. And it's just great to go, oh my gosh, that brewery's, 4 miles down that way. I didn't even realize it. So that's what I love about it. I wish every state had it. Most do, but yeah, we were the first because we've had this for about 3 years now.
I will say I have been enjoying really maybe one of the only silver linings to come out of, businesses having to kind of restrict what they were doing, beer delivery and mailing. That's been real fun. Have
you been taking advantage of that? Have you been ordering beers that you can't get through shipping?
Oh yeah. I made a couple orders with Equilibrium.
Mm-hmm.
Well, you can sometimes find their cans in some local places around Schenectady like that. I'm like, well, if I'm going to order something, place an order like that, I'm going to order a bunch of something that I don't usually get. So I've done 2 orders with them. My girlfriend, actually, one of them was my girlfriend did for my birthday. Like, one of the best presents ever. She's like, but this will be gone so fast. So?
Yeah, right. It feels a bit like Christmas, doesn't it? When, you get a box of beer waiting for you.
It really does. And I remember something was going on, and I think my mother asked me if I wanted to go do something with someone else in the family or something like that. Or asked me if I could do something. I'm like, I can't. I'm waiting for a package. I have to be here to sign for it. Mm-hmm. She asked me the next day, well, what were you waiting for? Beer.
Beer. Yeah.
I don't really know what that says about me, but yeah.
It's not legal in New York State. I didn't know if you knew that. So, well, it is temporarily. So
it's the temporary thing.
It's the temporary thing. So every 30 days we get it extended a little bit longer, but we have to make that permanent. I think it's going to be part of our 2021 legislative agenda to make shipping legal in New York State.
And I think that's going to need to be a priority because, who knows if everything ever gets back to as good as we didn't realize we may have had it.
Right.
But either between that or places willing to do delivery, which I took advantage of from Frog Alley, actually, when they started doing that. Definitely Artisanal from Saratoga. Mm-hmm. Another one of my favorite places to check out because they always have something new that Kurt's brewing up there. Mm-hmm. Let's talk about, you mentioned a lot of TV works, which I was surprised to see when I started looking into the Brewers Association and, trying to find some stuff out about you. Do you have degrees in both English literature and broadcasting?
Yes. Well, not a degrees. I mean, my major, I went to Nazareth College in Rochester and I graduated with a degree in English literature, but I took communications as a side.
Nice. I actually have a communications degree.
Do you really? Okay.
Yeah.
From where?
College of St. Rose in Albany.
All right. Nice. Yeah.
Funny enough, I was, I have an associate's in computer science, and then I was going to do a bachelor's in that, and I transferred into SUNY Albany, where I was really struggling with the electives. It's such a large college. They were all 200 to 300 student classes. I was struggling. I didn't think the teachers in those classes were the greatest. It was hard to get help. So I actually ended up getting academically terminated because, I was even losing my motivation. So I transferred to St. Rose and I graduated with honors. And to this day, and I switched to communications at St. Rose and graduated with honors. And to this day, I regret not keeping that "you are dismissed" letter. and sending a picture of me holding my St. Rose degree to the person that signed it.
Oh, yeah, good. Yeah, that would have been nice.
That would have been great, and I really regret not doing that. But the communications is great, though. I learned a lot. Actually, the last class I took to get my degree was a radio editing class and things like that, which is really unrelated to what I actually do to make a living, and is only related to a hobby where I drink and talk to strangers.
Well, there you go. But you're enjoying it, right?
I do enjoy it. It's fun. Yeah. Like I said, I meet a lot of cool people. I get the insight on some really cool beers, check out some cool places. One of my favorite things to do. But so how did you end up getting into English literature? Why was that a degree you were looking to pursue?
Because the school that I was at, which I didn't want to transfer, they didn't have a communications degree. So in Rochester, you could actually take a major at a school, and if they didn't have the minor you wanted, you could take it at another school in the city, and it wouldn't cost you any more. So
wow.
I went to St. John Fisher part-time for all my communications classes, and then got a degree at Nazareth in English literature. And just English literature just seemed like it was just more of a liberal arts degree, you know what I mean, in a sense. But communications is what I really loved, but I didn't want to go to St. John Fisher full-time, so I wanted to stay at Nazareth. So that's how.
And I mean, having the communications degree, I can certainly see a beneficial connection between the two.
Sure. You got to know how to write, and you got to know how to do research, and
talking.
Hard. Yeah. And talking. Yeah.
Talking is hard.
Exactly.
One of the things that stood out to me, I mean, you mentioned doing some work for a lot of networks. How did you were multimedia producer at the Baseball Hall of Fame?
I was.
How did you get into that?
So another lucky break. One of my best friends is from Cooperstown, and we were roommates in Rochester, and I would always go back and forth there. And he, I wasn't particularly happy or doing anything great in Rochester, and so he convinced me to send my resume, and I sent my resume to the Hall of Fame, and a guy had happened to quit the day after my resume showed up there.
So kind of convenient.
Well, it just, again, another timing thing, and that where the stars aligned, and the curator, who had a very messy office, who was one of my bosses, just said, "Hey, call this guy. I just got this guy's resume." And so that was me. It was at the top of the pile because it had just arrived. So it was timing. If I had a week later or a week earlier, who knows? They might have gotten buried, and I may have never gotten a phone call. So I ended up moving there, and I always say I stayed there from Rizzuto to Ryan, those inductions. So Phil Rizzuto and Steve Carlton were the first induction that I worked. And then George Brett and Nolan Ryan, Robin Yount were the last ones that I worked. So
Phil Rizzuto, I hear that name and I immediately think of the show Seinfeld, just because of George Costanza working for the Yankees. There's an episode where he gets the Phil Rizzuto keychain.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, Phil Rizzuto, shortstop for the Yankees, and he's a great guy. I love Phil Rizzuto.
And I remember when I was a kid looking up addresses because I wanted to try to get autographs and things like that. And I think I looked up a bunch of like team addresses somehow, or just anything close. And probably God bless my parents and just indulging me and letting me do this. I was mailing out my own copies of baseball cards I had. And I think the only response I got a letter back from the Texas organization about Nolan Ryan, and they couldn't sign the card for some reason, but they included a black and white autographed picture of Nolan Ryan. I'm like, holy shit.
That was great. How about that?
I'm like, I can't believe someone actually got it and responded.
Yep. Yeah, he's a good guy too.
I've never been a huge baseball fan. I don't watch it on TV. I find that a little boring, but I always enjoyed going to a game or something like that. That's always more fun because, there's the snacks, there's the beer, there's the atmosphere that you can get into.
Yeah, I really missed that this year.
Yeah, I miss most of anything you could do in public these days.
Right, with people, right?
Yeah.
Not on Zoom, I know. Yeah.
Wow, I feel like that was a cheap shot at me, but okay.
No, because it was a dig at Zoom is great. I'm so happy that it came when it did, because a lot of what we've been doing from the, this year, just to stay alive from an association standpoint, is I rely heavily on my counterparts from the other states. And so I have been far too many Zoom happy hours when this all started in March, where I would get together with them in this format, 2 or 3 times a week, talking about how we're going to survive. It was like, it was almost like a peer group that we all kind of rely on each other. And it was like, it was definitely a a psychology session. You know what I mean? Like we just helped each other. So that was more of like, I love Zoom, but like you, it's much better to be like, it'd be better if we were at a bar talking right now. You know,
Oh, yeah.
I would rather be doing the same thing, but this works out great.
Yeah, and like I said before we even recorded, I've only done this, well, maybe 4 or 5 times now since things closed down. Now, what did you do for HGTV? Because I used to watch a bunch of HGTV, and I'm curious if any of the hosts that you've met are still around and what they were like.
I was there in the early days of HGTV, like when it first started, to date myself. And I just worked on 2 shows, one show called Dream Builders and another one called Old Homes Restored. And so for them, I was a videographer editor primarily
Oh, wow.
for those shows. So yeah. And then just, you know, after those shows ended or after I left there, then you start meeting a lot of TV people. And it's just one of those industries where like, if you meet people and we all are, you know, have certain talents, and we all get along, then when somebody gets a job on another show, they tend to go, oh, I like this person a lot. If you need somebody who can do this, get them. So it's very like, you want to get your group together, and that's how you just get job after job after job, because you keep getting recommended or you recommend people. And yeah, and that's how it worked.
It's an interesting industry, either, you know, going into media like that, because, you know, it's not it's not really a guaranteed typical day-to-day job.
Right.
You're just constantly looking at different jobs, which it's fascinating. I don't know if I could live that way myself.
Yeah, I was tired of it, to be honest with you. I mean, that's why I wanted to do something different. So
Are you still doing a lot of or any production or editing or media type work like that?
just for the
Just for the
association.
Oh,
Yeah.
wow.
You know, I do stuff for them because, you know, I'm free, I guess. You know what I mean? We don't have to hire anybody to do stuff, so I can do all the editing and I can do all the you know, videography and all that stuff. So
And then one thing I thought was kind of hilarious on your professional website there, paulione.tv, it was a copy, of course, of a resume you had posted. I think it said 2013 on it.
yeah.
But as I was just scrolling through it, there's all this production, editing, media, marketing stuff, your education, and then just one line at the bottom, working on my Cicerone certification, beer expert.
Yeah. Yeah. You know, it's funny. And I'll admit it. I've actually failed that test twice.
It's not easy,
It's not
from what
easy.
I've heard.
And I missed it by, you know, I passed the tasting portion, but just the amount, what tripped me up every single time, and it was my own fault because I just didn't have time to do the reading and research, was beer styles. There are so many beer styles. And have you taken the Cicerone?
No.
Yeah. So, I mean, it literally is just random when you take it. It's like, well, tell us about a Kolsch and the history of it. And what is the, you know, percentage of, you know, normal percentage of ABV and IBUs in a typical, like you literally have to know every single beer, everything about the beer, its origin. I mean, it's tough. And, you know, I didn't do enough reading and homework. So that tripped me up. So I literally missed passing it last time by 2 points. So,
Wow.
yeah.
I just thought it was funny because that was kind of unrelated to everything I just read, and it's like out of nowhere.
Yeah, I've always been into beer. When I was working on the Home and Garden TV show in Washington, D.C., I'm like, you know, I came in traffic there is horrible. My 2-hour ride home from D.C. to Maryland.
Oh, God.
I just had an idea of like, I could write a TV show pilot about beer. You know, craft beer is going to be big, and I'm going to write a show, and I need a host, and I got to find a host. And so I did some research on the internet, and I found this guy who had rowboated a 6-pack of beer across the Delaware River to Pennsylvania. And his name was Sam Calagione, who is the owner of Dogfish Head. And so back then he wasn't Sam Calagione. He was just a guy that was building a brewery. And now he's a superstar, and he's sold his brewery to Sam Adams for $300 million.
Oh, that's right. And that was only recently. That was only like a year or two ago?
Right. So Sam always wanted to do TV. So we shot 2 pilots together that never got picked up. And then Sam ended up doing a TV series on Discovery.
Did he really?
Yeah, he did. It was, it didn't last long. It was I think it was called Brewmasters. It was an expensive show. People are shocked. Like a broadcast TV show literally cost about $125,000 an episode. At least it did back then to produce.
Oh, wow.
So it's expensive to do. And if you don't get ratings, then you can't pay for the show. And Sam, you know, Discovery is a huge network. And I just don't think that they pulled the numbers. People still just, it was a good show. I just not sure how many people were into beer yet, watching beer TV.
Yeah. It's I'm curious how that would do these days, as it's exploded even more, the craft beer scenes everywhere and whatnot. But
yeah, the following two pilots that we ended up shooting, and this is true for any TV show, is that it has to be entertaining first and about beer second. And if you think about that for a second, just to grab somebody, there were like 3 shows about logging on. You know what I mean? Like but it was never really about logging. It was
storage,
about the characters, right?
Or storage wars or something like that. Yeah,
so exactly right. But it's entertaining first, and then it just happens to be about cutting down trees or fishing, or and so beer really that's what would make a successful show. I think just a super entertaining show. But when we were shopping, there were production companies shopping around, calling brewers, going, are you a family-run brewery? Do you guys fight all the time? Like they were looking for that angle to be super, people yelling at each other, and they're all like, no, we all kind of like each other.
Looking for storylines.
Yeah, and it's very kumbaya industry.
It's hard to put together something where, if you're looking for kind of storyline where everyone loves each other and gets along great, we support each other.
Right, that's a great time.
Oh.
Yeah.
I mean, that
doesn't make for entertaining television.
It's fun if you're there to have a beer and chat, but watching on TV, there's not much. Yeah, I can see that.
Yep.
I forgot where I was going next.
Sorry.
I know. No, I took a tour of the Sam Adams Brewery in Boston, maybe like 3 years ago with my brother when we went we did a tour of the brewery and then a Red Sox game, which was a fun day. It's a cool little place. I know it's kind of their testing facility. They do their mass production out of Cincinnati, I think, or something like that.
They've got like 4 breweries around the country. They're a contract brewer primarily.
Yeah, and thinking back of how fast they really grew it's pretty impressive.
Yeah, Jim Cook's done a great job. He's a good guy, and more power to him.
I know you talked about Beer TV, and I saw this. I don't know if you still do anything with it. Was it Beer America TV?
I did. In 2008, I lost my job I was doing a show on PBS, and we were out living in Savannah, Georgia. And when the economy crashed in 2008, TV shows can't run without sponsorship. So I ended up losing my job. And so I was really into beer. And so I started a video beer blog, which is in 2008 was really rare. There was nobody doing it online, believe it or not, in 2008. So I just started doing it. I started doing a ton of episodes, and it's shocking that, some episodes would get like, 45 views and some would get 5,000. And it's like, so we just tried to make it entertaining. We never rated beers. I'm not a rate beer person, because I could tell you right now that this Kolsch is the best Kolsch you'll ever have in your life. And it's not true, because who knows if you even like Kolsch's, who am I to say this is the best beer ever. Right. And so we never rated beers, because taste is subjective. So.
I'm kind of the same way. Like I like with the Untapped app, and my dog just came out running from somewhere. With like the Untapped app and everything like that, they want you to rate beers to help track and stuff. I don't like rated beers. I'm like, I like it. It's good. I can't really judge it out of like 5 stars or things like that. I like it. I'll make note of it. I like what I like. It is subjective. It's just like any kind of art form. Everything is subjective, which is, right. I don't rating beers. All it means is a lot of people like it. That's fine.
It's a necessary evil, in brewers, of course, it always drives, and I can tell you, brewers look at it, they'll look at their Untapped rating on beers, but then there's always those people that'll give it a 1 star because this IPA sucked because I don't like IPAs, and they give it a 1 star.
Oh God. Yeah. Those people are the worst.
Right. So it just drags it down. And some people really rely on those ratings if they want to spend $16 on a 4-pack. You know what I mean? Like that's a big decision, and they'll use Untapped to say, oh, wow, it's got 4 stars, or, whatever. I might spend that $16 on it.
And don't get me wrong. I've made decisions based on that from time to time when I'm at a beverage center and there's just so much around me. Like this has the most positive reviews. I won't read all the descriptions because people just post asshole comments sometimes.
Mm-hmm. Right.
And for the most part, I haven't gotten something that said 4 stars or something like that. And I'm like, wow, I hate this.
Right.
I can't complain. But personally, I find it hard to rate stuff. I'm like, this is great. I really enjoy it. But, I don't know what you would enjoy if someone asked me.
Right.
But the premise for Beer America TV, as I was reading, it sounded really cool. So was it you went around the country, right, to visit 6 breweries?
Oh, so that was the TV pilot, is what you're talking about. So yeah, I used to do beeramerica.tv was a website that used to do video beer blogs, but that was really what the pilot was called, Beer America TV. And
Oh, okay.
so Beer America was what we named the pilot. So we shot 4 pilots. 2 of them was Sam Calagione, and then Warren Miller Entertainment. So I had this little video beer blog that was getting a lot of reviews, and there were and some production assistant in Warren Miller Entertainment, which is a big production company in Colorado, saw it and said that would be so 2 people saw it. Warren Miller Entertainment saw it, and then the producers of Diners, Drive-Ins, and Dives saw it, and they both called and said this would be a great TV show, And I'm like, I know. And so so we ended up shooting a pilot with Warren Miller Entertainment, and because they funded a pilot, and then we took the feedback from that pilot and shot another one at the Great American Beer Festival. But that was the one that I don't know if you've ever had in your life, like life-changing moments, like where you something happens and you go, oh, this is like the stars come out and the light starts shining, like, oh, I get it now. And so that was my kind of beer moment. Was I spent a week with the guys at Oscar Blues out in Colorado,
Oh, really?
shooting this pilot. And they, back in the day, before they're now big, now they're Canarchy and they're a big, corporation. But back in the day, Dale Katechis, who started all this, he was a very fuck it kind of guy, right? He was a guy that would go around and go, why can't we do this? Why can't we put beer in a can, right? And everybody's like, you're crazy. People will never drink beer out of a can because and he was one of the first that did it, because he's like, fuck it. I'm putting beer in a can. I'm going to do it. And it took off. And when I was out there, the work environment was just, they all loved each other and they were having fun. They were making great beer. He was making a lot of money. I mean, it was just fun. And I'm like, I love these people. And if I could work with people like this every day, I would be happy every day. Like, and that's when I decided I wanted to work in beer after being with them. Like, I wanted to be them. I didn't want to leave them because they were so much fun to be around.
One of the things I enjoyed about doing the podcast, when I can record it on location, is it's a great environment. You could tell the people working there are passionate about what they do. Everyone I talk to, everyone else knows everyone else and supports each other. It's just a great community to it's just fun to kind of be a part of. I mean, I don't brew beer. I probably never will. I don't really think I have the tasting palate to do it. Mm-hmm. It's not so much, it wouldn't be like the work ethic or trying to learn. I'm like, I don't think I can distinguish taste well enough to really be able to accentuate what I'm tasting, how I'm tasting it, mouthfeel and things like that.
Yeah. Yeah. I never wanted to brew beer either, and I never have. So I just wanted to be around these people, and it's not an industry that you get into to make money. That's the one thing, is there's always this perception that, that brewers, oh my gosh, look at the lines of people, and people are full bars. They don't make a lot of money. Brewers don't, because whatever money they bring in, they're constantly reinvesting. Oh, I got to buy 2 more tanks.
Oh yeah.
Or we're going to hire more people because, and so they are not sleeping on beds of cash at night. They really are not. And so it's not an industry you get into. I mean, there's rare exceptions, that breweries that are doing really well. But Sophia Barbaresco, who was on our board and was with what used to be with Industrial Arts, she has a quote that I saw her. She said, if you want to make $1 million in beer, start with 2 million. So, and I'm like, I've never heard that before. That sums it up.
Yeah. Well, that's a great segue let's get into the Brewers Association, what you guys do and your role there. So for anyone who's not aware of it, what is the New York State Brewers Association and their purpose?
It is the trade association for craft beer in New York State. So there's an association for everything. So there's a wine association, a cider association, a distillers association, and basically all of our jobs are to change the laws in New York State, or make sure that there's good laws, and make sure that you can get beer eventually shipped to your house. That's what we do. We have a lobbying firm, and we basically try to change the laws and make sure bad laws don't screw up the industry. And then we also market New York State beer statewide and nationally and internationally. So we're the trade association for them. It's a membership dues based. It's a nonprofit. So, any money that we bring in, we have to bring in on our own. We don't get money.
Kind of mentioned it earlier. So you're in touch with a lot of other states brewery associations and things like that?
Yeah, so when I was hired, I was the first executive director in New York State. And I want to say there were only 20 executive directors in the entire United States. Like it wasn't in 2013, there weren't many of us. And before this, there were 51 state directors. That includes Washington, D.C. So every state had an executive director. And then now there's executive directors of city guilds. Like it's just, and then, so our job is full time because we're a board run nonprofit. So the board, they're all brewery owners. They don't have time to do the day to day. So that's what we do. We do the day to day. And so I'm very close because there's so few of us that do what we do in this industry that's growing like crazy. We rely heavily on each other. So we all know each other from around the country.
For anyone wondering, that was me opening another can of Frog Alley Kicker Pilsner earlier.
I would say another same beer?
Yeah. Yep, same beer. I got 24 of them to get through.
All right.
Not tonight.
All right. I was going to say, I want to see you do this.
This is my fourth of the day, though, and I worked until 2:30 today. So
nice.
That's
not bad.
No, it's 5 hours later.
Yeah.
And like I said, these are 12 ounces, so it's not as much as pounding 4 pints.
No, and the ABV's got to be around 5.
I think it was one thing about Frog Alley I've noticed is they don't put that on the can label. But I think I looked it up on their site. I think it was like 4.8, 4.9. It's nice to have something in my fridge other than the 8%, 8%ers I have that I can sit here and actually have more than one or two.
Right. Yeah. That's why I love them. That's been my thing all summer long is drinking the 5%ers because you can enjoy more than one.
Yeah. So as executive director, what are a lot of your duties? What are your typical day-to-day stuff? I'm curious.
It's changed. When I was first hired, I was just me. And so, the primary goal is to raise money because you've got to have money to survive. So we did that primarily through beer festivals. So we organized at least 4 beer festivals a year. One at the Desmond Hotel by you was one was one of our early ones.
I've been to that one the last couple of years. That was a great one. That was one of my favorite days of the year, was going to that festival.
Yeah, that's where we raise money. I mean, that's how we raise money. So now I actually have 2 other full-timers. There's 4 of us on staff now. 3 full-time, 1 part-time. And we kind of live all around the state. So we don't have offices. Yeah, we're a board-run company, a board-run nonprofit. And my day-to-day is just now my day-to-day is answering, staying ahead of, what the governor's office is going to do and what state liquor authority is going to do, understanding all the regulations and getting that out to every brewery in the state. Like that's my primary job.
That's I assume that's basically how your job has changed in the last 3 months, thanks to COVID and everything.
Yeah, we were sending out communications every day for a while, and brewers, because they just needed it. And that's our job, is to make sure they have the information they need. And so for instance, like recently when the governor started mandating food, now when you go to a brewery, you have to have a food item. You can't just go to a brewery, sit down, have a beer. You have to order something, bag of chips. So they have to have something for you there. So that was really confusing for a lot of folks. So that was our job, was to sort out what they could do and what they couldn't do in case an SLA investigator came in, and making sure they were following the law.
Yeah, that's crazy. I mean, without going, deep diving into the politics, I mean, I understand the idea, I guess, he had behind it is, people have food, they won't get up and wander around as much, because that's what you're trying to avoid.
Correct.
But it is funny seeing some of the options people were able to get away with meeting that requirement.
Right. So then they made it even like a little harder. So, it's interesting. I'm very proud of this fact. The bars, and not to pick on bars, but, that's really where that's where most of the violations are right now. And people crowding at bars. But as breweries are not bars. Right. It's just a different setup. Right. The people don't go there and crowd at a bar like you would at a bar. They tend to get a table. They tend to, get their beer. And so that's our fight right now. I think what we're really concerned about is that there's going to be a rebound in the fall. And if there is, there's no doubt this governor will roll back the phases, and if it ever gets to a point where he says we're closing all bars, we want to make sure that breweries are not part of that. Because they're not bars, it's the they're far more on top of cleaning than bars are. I mean, that's what you have to keep a brewery clean to begin with. You know, like one wrong bacteria can spoil beer, like an entire batch of beer. So they're cleaning constantly anyway.
Cleaning is more than half the job at breweries. And
It's more than half the job.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, even if you spend any time in one, you'll realize that if you start talking to anyone that works there, it's like the majority of the job is cleaning.
People there's no doubt people have the illusion that a brewer like is basically sipping and tasting beer all day and making beer, and that's not how it is. I
mean, they may look like a grunge band player from the 90s, but that's because they've spent their day working hard cleaning.
Correct. And it's most of their job is cleaning. It's not glamorous at all, but they do it because they love it. So
at least to be fair politically, the New York governor seems to have been willing to roll back stuff as, you know, all the cases have dropped and things like that. So it's nice to see he's not fearful enough to keep stuff the way it was. He's willing to let stuff reopen. And that really the responsibility is just on the people now not to be assholes and take care of each other.
Right. And so that I always say, regardless of your politics, this governor has been really good in a lot of ways. And I think one of the ways that he was really good through all of this was mandating face coverings. And I know that's a political hot point, right?
Which is ridiculous because it shouldn't be. It should be specifically a health thing like it is in any other country. But that's besides the point.
Right. But by mandating it, though, what he did is he allowed business to put a line in the sand, right? And say, you can't come into my business without this because it's mandated.
Now it's no shirt, no shoes, no face.
Correct. Right. If it's not mandated, then brewers can have people that are unmasked and it becomes, you know, and so that was really a good thing, you know? And I think for me personally, and again, I don't want to slide into politics, but I didn't like wearing a mask to begin with either. It was weird, right? I mean, why wearing a mask? It's pretty normalized here in New York State. You have it in your pocket with you wherever you go, you put it on, and it's just the way we have to do right now.
It's kind of just a matter of getting used to doing anything else you do.
Right.
I mean, there's like some guideline or maybe it's some theory that what does it take to like break a habit or really get into a habit? It's like 2 to 3 weeks or something like that. I mean, after a couple of weeks, you're used to, you know, your habits changing. You're just used to that now.
You're too young though for this, but I do remember like when seatbelts became a law, right? I mean, it was nobody ever really wore them, but when that became a law, right, it was weird. It's like I got to strap into the car now, like it's by law, and now it's just habit for everybody. They just put your seatbelt on when you get in your car and you go.
There's just too many people that can't stand that idea of something being required, I think.
I know.
They just don't like that feeling, but even if it's for the best. But
you know what I like right now as we're talking on this day is the fact that New York's got really low numbers, right? And so that has allowed all of us to be a little more free. I'm sure that it allowed you to do your last interview at a brewery, right? You're not Zoom because we wear masks, New York's numbers are low. So that allows you to get out and have a beer and all of us to get out and have a beer. And to me, that's worth it, right?
Oh yeah, absolutely.
You know, so
I will remember that beer I had at Unified for a long time. Mm-hmm. Just like I'll remember the last beer I had 3 or 4 months before that period where I only drank at home for a long time as well.
Yeah, a lot of Zoom happy hours.
Yes. So, I mean, you touched on, of course, a lot of the fundraising you guys do are from the drinking festivals and stuff you do throughout the year. Obviously, the first 3 of them this year were canceled, including the Albany one. I know there's still currently one on the schedule for November. Or is that officially canceled by now?
No, I wait. It's not officially canceled, but there's no way it's happening. I mean, we're going to cancel that one soon. It just is. It's too risky, and nobody's going to go out in this, and we shouldn't put people at risk or brewers at risk for anything. So, no, that one will be canceled as well. We're doing everything pretty much virtually right now.
Yeah, like I said, sadly things are different this year. But speaking of virtually, there is a big event going on that you guys somehow managed to put together this week. And as I read more into it, I'm like, this must have seemed like a massive undertaking. Just looking through it and all the coordination involved. Why don't we tell me what's going on this weekend?
This weekend is the Peace, Love, Beer, and Music Festival, virtual. And so what we decided to do a few months ago, we came up with this concept. And we literally, you know, with Woodstock being in New York State and with music being such an important part of the brewery experience anyway, and I'm lucky enough to have Chloe Kay on my staff who does all my marketing. She's also a graphic designer. So we came up with this logo and this concept of a weekend long live performances at breweries from all over the state. And you can tune in and so like to a channel guide at thinkny.drinkny.com, and there's a whole website for it. And it's just entertaining brewery content for 3 days. And a lot of music. We've got BMI recording artists from around the country doing this for us as well.
Yeah,
So
it's not even just state specific in that way, which is
right.
even more interesting. The
So
50 on the 5th, and it's actually the 51st anniversary of Woodstock.
Correct. We did it. That's why we picked that weekend, just to kind of tip our hat to those folks and that history. And then now we have brewers from all over the state as well doing a Summer of Love collaboration beer. So there's a list of all of those on the website as well. There's quite a few in your area.
I don't think anywhere of it. I think they're pretty much all available starting tomorrow. We're recording this, of course, on Thursday. Today's Thursday, right?
Today is Thursday.
Yeah, Thursday the 13th. Of course, the virtual festival kicks off tomorrow on the 14th. Sadly, I won't have this edited and posted before that starts. I will. Right. I'm actually going to work hard to get it posted at least Saturday or Sunday this weekend. People will still love to hear how this came together. So what was the effort like to try to get all these people on a schedule and get everything organized?
It was, it's an effort. It's still an effort. It's not ready. Like after this interview, I've got to go back and start editing more stuff for the weekend. So
oh, wow.
We're still going to come down to the wire, but really where this idea came from was we've been doing virtual tasting events before this during in March and April and May, and those are going to come back this fall. But because of shipping, you could basically buy, we'll do 4 really, popular breweries, and you can buy a ticket for 90 minutes on Zoom with the brewers. You get a brewery tour, you get a 4-pack of beer for the ticket price, and you get to hang out and Q&A with a bunch of people. And it was a lot of fun. So those did well for us. We raised some money. We're going to do a lot of that again this fall. So
the virtual happy hours were great because, it was an hour sitting down with the brewers and hearing about the brewery. I was able to certainly tune into a few of them. And, of course, some of the guys I knew. Scott from Indian Ladder is always hilarious to –
Yeah, you interviewed him, I saw. Scott's the greatest. He is
super cool guy. Him and Sam from C.H. Evans, he was always great. Who sadly has left New York.
But he left New York. Yeah,
he might as well have died. I mean, let's face it.
He's dead to me now.
Yeah, absolutely.
But that was one of my favorite ones that he did. Did you see his?
I only saw parts of it. I know talking to him about his makeshift pizza making and just basically whatever's lying around the
right. Yeah, he just was a blast. It was so much fun.
Yeah, those are great, and I definitely recommend for people to check those out when those come back. Obviously, I'm going to work my best, like I said, to try to get this posted relatively soon this weekend so that people can hear about how this came together. Tell me about Summer Love beer that people are collaborating on. Is it basically a similar recipe that everyone is kind of adding their own flair to? So I'm going to ask this question for a third time because I don't know what people will or will not hear by the time I get this posted. The Summer of Love beer.
Summer of Love.
Get this right this time. There was an idea of making it a cream ale, but it happened at short notice. That takes a little tank time, so brewers kind of needed flexibility with it. So what people can expect is kind of different variations of what it would be if they see this out and about.
It's going to be whatever the brewers, maybe they had a recipe of a beer they were going to brew anyway this summer, and so now they just call it Summer of Love, as part of it. And every sale of Summer of Love, money comes back to the association. So it's just another way of breweries supporting us and consumers. Like everybody wins. The brewery sells beer, and then $1 from each beer goes back to us to continue to raise money, and the consumer gets a really awesome beer. So it's a win-win-win.
And of course, that's the whole point of the virtual Peace, Love, Beer Music Festival going on the next 3 days. Giant fundraiser to help raise money for the Brewers Association, the New York craft beer scene. Of course, all kinds of musical acts. What people may or may not know is, of course, the merchandise available. Well, it's got some awesome designs. You mentioned the graphic designer, Chloe K, I believe, right?
Yeah.
Who I see posting on Facebook in the beer groups all the time as well.
Yeah, she's great. She was a marketing director at a brewery in Rochester, and that brewery unfortunately closed. And so we're like, we've got to have her on our staff because she's multi-talented. And then Jen Myers on our staff is a former brewer at several breweries in the Finger Lakes, and she's my membership and events manager. So she's really kind of the really organizing a lot of this.
That's awesome. Actually, one of the things I really want to get from the website is just that tie-dye-ish pint look size looking glass. Yeah. That's an awesome looking glass. I need to get one of those in a t-shirt, actually.
Yeah, that would be great.
I think that seems like a good place to go into an outro, and we'll do our plugs. You could tell people how they can help out. So that's going to do it for this episode of Stories from a Bar before Paul has another power surge and my internet connection goes.
My bad.
all within 10 minutes of each other, apparently.
Yeah.
So a big thank you to my guest, Paul Leone from the Brewers Association, for joining me. I appreciate you hanging out, taking the time to chat, sharing a drink. You're a busy guy. You've got things to do.
Yeah, but I appreciate you doing this, Chris. This is great. And I appreciate the fact that, you do enjoy this. And I totally love that about what you're doing. And then, you're really helping breweries by having them on your show. So thank you for that.
Oh, absolutely. It's my pleasure, man. Like I said, when I started doing this, because I started helping a friend with his podcast and I got to know some cool podcast people. I mean, it just seemed like something fun. I'm like, well, what am I really into? I really enjoy going to bars and breweries, tasting new beers, chatting with strangers and the people there. Mm-hmm. Like, that'd be a fun podcast to do. And of course, music. So I want to try to start mixing in some more local musicians and things like that. Or,
this will grow.
Yes, I'm hoping. If I can make money from this somehow, that'd be super. But, I'm not going to push my luck. Right now, it's
content. Exactly. You've got a lot of content, and that's the more the better.
It's I like to think I've done really well for a pretty area-specific podcast.
Yeah.
The way it's been so far.
Yeah.
But so be sure to check out the New York State Brewers Association. You can see them at their website, newyorkcraftbeer.com, to learn a lot more about them, the New York craft beer in general, supporting the breweries.
Yeah. Can I just real quick, the consumer the consumer website is actually thinknydrinkny.com.
Thinkny.
Okay. That's the consumer website. The other one is more for the brewers. So the consumer website, thinknydrinkny.com, has all our festival information and what we're doing virtually, and has all the gear and all that stuff.
Awesome. You can also be sure to, you can not also be sure, not also, just be sure to follow them on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, Think New York, Drink New York, Brewers Association, anything New York craft beer related, just follow it. The breweries included, everything in New York. Follow it. It's all great stuff. As Paul said, you can keep track of the events going on, ways to help great virtual festivals and happy hours the way things are going now. Hopefully get back to the in-person festivals soon enough. Am I forgetting anything, Paul?
No, or if you want to find every brewery in the state, the New York Craft Beer app in your app store is a great way to start.
Absolutely.
You get free stuff, too. The more stamps you get, passports, stamps.
Who doesn't like free stuff?
I know, right? So... And you get to go to a bunch of breweries and find them. So.
Even better.
Yeah.
And lastly, of course, thank you everyone out there for checking out the show. You can find Stories from a Bar on Facebook. Follow the show on Instagram and Twitter at StoriesFAB. You'll find the show on Apple and Google Podcasts, of course, Podbeam, Stitcher, Spotify, YouTube, the main places you would expect to find the podcast. Please, if anyone out there is using a different service I'm not aware of, feel free to shoot me a message. And I'll figure out how to get the podcast there, because it's all about making it available. I love everyone that takes the time to listen to this. I greatly appreciate it. Best thing you can do is, of course, always spread the word. Be sure to leave positive reviews, subscribe. And until next time, cheers.
Cheers.